They told you it was chemistry, that mysterious electricity when your pulse sprints, your skin sparks, your stomach drops. The butterflies, the dizziness, the ache that keeps you awake at night, replaying someone's smile, someone's voice, someone's presence. And you called it fate. You called it love. But chemistry does not put chains on your choices. Power does. Tonight, somewhere in the world, a person will surrender. Not because they found love, but because their shadow found a lever. You think you are choosing who to want. Look closer. Something older is choosing for you. Carl Jung warned that desire does not just pull you, it recruits you. It searches for your unhealed places. It finds the holes in your story. It slips on a mask shaped like the one, and it whispers, follow. That rush you call a sign? Your nervous system has felt it before. It felt it in a house where affection was rationed. It felt it in a silence where praise was rare. It felt it in a gaze that made you small and desperate, certain you had to prove yourself to be worthy of being loved. That was not romance. That was training. So, when a stranger arrives with that same voltage, distant enough to make you chase, warm enough to keep you hoping, your body salutes like a soldier obeying an old command. You whisper, "This must be special." Your shadow whispers, "This is familiar." And familiar always wins. Here's the part no one wants to hear. If they can move you, they can use you. And the people who understand this, whether consciously or not, do not need to shout, do not need to threaten, do not need to beg. They only need to reflect the piece of you have never met. The missing half you keep outsourcing to someone else. Jung named those masks anima and animus. The inner figures you exiled long ago, now walking toward you in another body. You do not see a person, you see a promise of completion, a promise of redemption, a promise of home. But that's not love, that's leverage. And in the next few minutes, I am going to show you 3 things. 1, how your shadow turns desire into a contract you never read. The exact moment lust flips into control, and why your brain still labels it chemistry. The test Jung would want you to run before you hand anyone the keys to your life. But first, ask your body a question. When did "I can't stop thinking about them" start to feel like "I can't stop obeying them"? When did butterflies become permission to ignore red flags? When did longing start negotiating against your own dignity? If these questions sting, good. Pain is not punishment. Pain is data. It's your psyche begging you not to repeat a story that almost finished you last time. Understand this. The most dangerous seduction isn't loud. It's measured. It does not conquer you. It lets you volunteer. It doesn't force chains onto your wrists. It hands you the rope and makes you tie the knot. Yourself. This is not an attack on desire. Desire is sacred. But when desire is steered by wounds you have never named, it becomes a steering wheel anyone can grab. So, here's the line you must learn to draw. If it makes you smaller, it isn't love. If it makes you choose them over yourself, it is not love. If it feels like destiny only when you are anxious, it is not love. It's power wearing your favorite fantasy. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you will know why you keep falling for what hurts you, how to spot the exact trick your shadow uses to sell you on it, and the first step to breaking the contract, so that desire stops being a cage and becomes a choice. Because the darkest truth about sexual desire isn't that it misleads you, it's that it governs you, until you learn to govern it. Carl Jung's lesson begins now. They told you it was natural, that the butterflies in your stomach were proof of love, that the racing heartbeat was your soul recognizing its match, that the obsession, the sleepless nights, the feeling of being spellbound meant destiny had finally found you. But Carl Jung would tell you something very different. He'd say, that isn't chemistry, that's projection. Think about the last time you couldn't stop thinking about someone, the texts you reread, the way you stared at your phone, waiting for a reply that never came, the way your body seemed to betray you, tense, restless, alive, in a way it hadn't been in years. It felt like a sign. But Jung would say it was your shadow rehearsing an old story. We confuse intensity with intimacy. We call it attraction when really it's recognition. Not recognition of them, recognition of a wound. That spark, that so-called chemistry, is often the nervous system remembering a pattern, a cold parent whose love you had to earn, a distant partner who gave just enough to keep you hooked, a memory of never being enough, now wrapped in the body of a stranger. And because it feels familiar, it feels right. Because it hurts in the same rhythm you once knew, you mistake it for passion. But here's the truth. The body doesn't know the difference between love and trauma when both produce the same adrenaline. Your heart doesn't just race for joy, it also races for fear. This is why some of the most intoxicating attractions happen with people who are wrong for you, unavailable, manipulative, even toxic, yet you feel pulled to them like a magnet. Why? Because your unconscious has mistaken them for completion. It believes this person holds the missing piece of you, but they don't. They only hold a mirror. Jung warned us that what we project onto others isn't who they are. It's who we've lost, suppressed, or denied within ourselves. When you crave someone to the point of obsession, you're often chasing your own reflection, the part of you that was hidden in shadow. So, what you call chemistry is often not a signal of destiny. It's a reenactment. It's your psyche trying to finish an unfinished story, to win a battle you lost in childhood, to rewrite a script that once left you powerless. That is why the attraction feels so strong. It isn't about them. It's about you, your pain, your wound, your shadow. And until you recognize this, you'll keep mistaking adrenaline for affection. You'll keep calling chaos connection. You'll keep falling for people who set your nervous system on fire, and then wonder why you always get burned. This is the myth of chemistry. It isn't magic. It isn't love. It's projection. And the sooner you see it for what it is, the sooner you can stop being seduced by your own shadow. Carl Jung believed that inside every man lives an invisible woman, and inside every woman lives an invisible man. He called them the anima and the animus, not imaginary characters, but forces, living currents in the unconscious, shadows of what we've denied, suppressed, or never developed in ourselves. The anima is the feminine hidden within the man. The animus is the masculine hidden within the woman. They are the unfinished halves of the psyche. And when ignored, they do not stay silent. They rise. They walk toward you in the shape of another person. Think about it. Why are you drawn to certain traits with an almost irrational hunger? The nurturing woman who feels like oxygen. The powerful man who radiates certainty. The mysterious stranger whose presence feels like a spell. It isn't always them you're drawn to. It's the ghost inside you, reflected back through their eyes. Jung said, attraction works like a mirror. When you meet someone who embodies your hidden opposite, your unconscious lights up like fire. It whispers, there is what you lack. Chase it, need it, worship it. And suddenly, you mistake reflection for reality. That's why the anima and animus feel like puppeteers. They pull strings you didn't know you had. They seduce you not with who the person really is, but with the illusion that they are the missing piece of your soul. Imagine a man who has never embraced his sensitivity, his vulnerability, his creative depth. When he meets a woman who carries those traits openly, his psyche doesn't just admire her, it kneels. Not because she is the one, but because she is the mirror of what he abandoned in himself. Or picture a woman who has never claimed her strength, her assertiveness, her clarity. When she encounters a man who embodies those traits with ease, she feels the pull of destiny. But it isn't destiny, it's projection. Her animus, wearing someone else's skin. And here lies the danger. When you fall in love with your anima or animus through another person, you're not falling in love with them. You're falling in love with the unfinished part of you. The part that has been waiting in silence, begging for recognition, disguising itself as desire. This is why attraction can feel both magical and maddening, because the unconscious doesn't care if the person is good for you. It only cares that they light up the mirror, even if that mirror leads you straight into obsession, chaos, or despair. The anima and animus are not your enemies. They are guides. But if you don't see them for what they are, they will keep seducing you through others, tricking you into mistaking longing for love and projection for fate. The truth is, the person you're chasing may not be your soulmate. They may only be your shadow in disguise, a mask worn by the ghost of your unfinished self. There's a point where attraction stops feeling like choice and starts feeling like chains. You tell yourself you're in control, that you could walk away if you wanted to. But the truth is, you can't. Not because they're holding you, but because something inside you refuses to let go. This is the trap of obsession. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are, how self-aware, how experienced. When desire crosses a certain threshold, it behaves less like passion and more like an addiction. Think about it. The racing thoughts you can't shut off. The way your body waits for their message like a drug. The spike of euphoria when they give you attention. And the crash into emptiness when they withdraw it. It's a cycle as ruthless as any chemical dependency, and yet we romanticize it. We call it chemistry, destiny, fate. But Jung would say it's none of those things. It's a projection trap. When someone embodies the qualities you've buried in yourself, your unconscious mistakes them for salvation. It crowns them as the missing piece of your story. And once that happens, you no longer see them as they are. You see them as everything you lack. You hand them your worth, your hope, your hunger, and then wonder why you feel powerless. This is why people stay in toxic relationships long after logic tells them to leave. Why they forgive betrayal, excuse cruelty, and cling to hope even when it destroys them. It's not weakness, it's the unconscious chaining them to a mirror. Jung warned that obsession is not about the other person, it's about you. It's your wound trying to complete itself through someone else. And wounds are stubborn. They don't let go easily. They demand reenactment until you finally confront them. Picture a man who swears he'll never go back to the woman who humiliates him. But the moment she calls, his resolve collapses. He isn't drawn to her kindness. He's drawn to the chaos she embodies. Chaos that feels like home. Or imagine a woman who knows a man is manipulative, distant, cruel. Her friends warn her. Her family begs her to leave, but she can't. Because every time he withdraws, her body mistakes the panic for passion. Every rejection makes her chase harder, just as she once chased the love she never received as a child. This is the spellbound pull Jung described. You aren't falling in love with a person. You're falling into your own shadow. And here's the danger. Obsession disguises itself as devotion. It convinces you that the intensity proves it's real. But intensity isn't proof of love, it's proof of captivity. Obsession reduces you to a fragment of yourself. It overrides logic, silences intuition, and enslaves your choices. It keeps you chasing a ghost, mistaking the rush of adrenaline for the touch of fate. And until you see it for what it is, you'll keep calling the chains passion. Never realizing that the more powerless you feel in love, the more your shadow is the one in control. Desire is supposed to bring people together, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. Carl Jung warned that attraction isn't always innocent. Sometimes it's strategy, sometimes it's domination disguised as romance. Because here's the truth most people refuse to face. The moment someone knows what moves you, they know what controls you. And seduction, whether conscious or unconscious, exploits this law with chilling precision. Many women, without ever studying psychology, instinctively learn that the most powerful form of control isn't aggression, it's reflection. They don't conquer by force. They conquer by becoming the mirror. A man who has never faced his anima, his hidden feminine side, will see her standing in front of him like a revelation. She seems to embody his softness, his mystery, his creativity. She reflects the very qualities he exiled long ago. And because she reflects them, he feels whole in her presence. But this isn't wholeness, it's leverage. Because if she chooses to play that role, consciously or not, he will surrender. He will call it love, but it's just projection. Jung understood this with terrifying clarity. The one you call your soulmate may only be the actor playing your unconscious script. But it isn't only women. Men too weaponize desire, only with a different tactic. Where the mirror seduces with reflection, the man seduces with distance. By offering intensity in bursts, then withdrawing, he creates a rhythm of starvation and reward, a rhythm the nervous system mistakes for passion. Think about the charming, magnetic man who knows how to light up a room, but never fully gives himself to one person. He burns bright enough to hook you, then vanishes long enough to make you chase. And the more you chase, the more powerful he becomes. This is why so many women fall for men who are cold, detached, even cruel. Because the absence itself becomes addictive. Every moment of attention feels like oxygen, and the withdrawal feels like suffocation. That cycle is not chemistry, it's conditioning. This is the weaponization of desire, to turn attraction into dependency, to make someone mistake their own hunger for proof of love. Seduction works because it doesn't just offer pleasure, it offers identity. The man who feels powerful only when pursued. The woman who feels alive only when desired. They don't need to love you. They only need to activate the wound you already carry. And once they do, you'll do the rest. You'll excuse the coldness. You'll glorify the distance. You'll confuse the reflection with destiny. And in doing so, you'll hand over the very power you thought you were sharing. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's unconscious. Sometimes the manipulator is just as wounded as the one being manipulated. But intention doesn't erase effect. The outcome is the same. Love becomes performance. Intimacy becomes leverage. And desire becomes the leash by which people walk each other into submission. What makes this so dangerous is that society rewards it. Movies, music, even social media glorify the chase, the mystery, the unattainable lover. We are taught that the more it hurts, the more it must be real. That love without obsession is boring. That safety is weakness. And so, the cycle repeats. People confuse manipulation for magnetism and domination for desire. But Jung's warning cuts through the illusion. What you call love may not be connection at all. It may be a performance scripted by the shadow, with you as the unwitting actor. And unless you recognize when seduction has turned into control, you will keep mistaking captivity for chemistry. Carl Jung warned us of a terrifying cycle. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. This is the cruel echo of trauma. You don't just remember your wounds, you reenact them. You repeat them, hoping, desperately, that this time the story will end differently. Psychologists call it repetition compulsion. But it feels like attraction. It feels like destiny. It feels like love. There was a man, brilliant and accomplished, respected by everyone. To the outside world, he had everything. But in private, his love life was a graveyard of heartbreak. Every woman he gave his heart to carried the same shadow. Cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. One left him for another man. One mocked him when he showed his vulnerability. One vanished without explanation. Different faces, same story. And even when he told himself, never again, even when his friends warned him, even when he recognized the red flags, he still went back. Why? Because he wasn't chasing those women. He was chasing his mother's ghost. As a boy, he grew up in a house where love was withheld, where praise was rationed, where affection was a rare prize you had to earn. So his psyche was trained to believe that love must always be fought for, that rejection was just another word for challenge, that being unseen was proof he wasn't enough. And now, as a man, every woman who made him feel invisible lit up that old wound. The wound whispered, "Here she is. Here's your chance to finally win the love you lost." But it was a lie. He wasn't falling for them. He was falling into repetition, into trauma's echo. There was a woman, beautiful, intelligent, magnetic. She could have chosen stability, kindness, devotion. But those men bored her. She only lit up around the ones who withheld affection, the ones who were dominant, unpredictable, emotionally cruel. She asked herself again and again, why am I only attracted to men who hurt me? The answer was hidden in her first heartbreak. Her father, a man who provided but never connected, who offered protection but not presence, who taught her, without words, that love was distant, that approval had to be earned, that affection was always just out of reach. So now, when she meets a man who is emotionally unavailable, her unconscious screams, "There it is, that familiar pain. Maybe this time we can fix it. Maybe this time he'll stay." But he doesn't. And the cycle continues. This is the horrifying trick of repetition compulsion. The wound disguises itself as desire. The more familiar the pain feels, the more intoxicating the attraction becomes. You call it chemistry, but it's really a reenactment. You call it passion, but it's really your nervous system chasing resolution. You say, "I can't help who I'm attracted to." But what you mean is, I can't escape the story I never finished. And so, the people who hurt you most feel the most magnetic. Not because they are your soulmate, but because they are your unfinished sentence. Jung believed that the psyche has an almost compulsive need to repeat its old wounds. Not out of cruelty, but out of hope. Hope that this time the story will end differently. Hope that this time the rejection will turn into acceptance, that the silence will turn into love, that the wound will finally close. But here's the devastating truth. You can't heal the past by replaying it with new actors. The child in you is still chasing the parent who couldn't give what you needed. And every new partner who mirrors that wound isn't here to heal it. They're here to remind you it exists. Until you confront it directly, you will keep replaying the same heartbreak in different bodies, mistaking trauma for attraction and addiction for love. The echo of trauma is seductive because it feels like home. But home is not always safe. Sometimes home is a battlefield you never left. And until you face the truth of your past, until you look into the wound and name it, you will keep building futures on the ruins of your childhood. This is the tragedy of repetition compulsion. You don't just fall in love with people. You fall in love with patterns. Patterns that whisper of closure, but deliver only chaos. And if you don't break the cycle, you won't just lose them, you'll lose yourself. Love is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where you rest, where you are seen, where you are safe. But for many, attraction doesn't build a sanctuary. It builds a battlefield. Every glance becomes a test. Every silence becomes a weapon. Every kiss feels less like tenderness and more like a treaty waiting to be broken. Carl Jung warned that when attraction is driven by the shadow, it doesn't unite, it collides. Two people don't meet in love, they meet in wounds. And when wounds meet, sparks don't just fly, they ignite wars. When you fall into shadow-driven attraction, you aren't really seeing the other person. You're seeing your reflection, and they're seeing theirs. Two mirrors face each other, each reflecting the other's brokenness back in infinite loops. He looks at her and sees the warmth he never allowed himself. She looks at him and sees the strength she never claimed. But beneath those projections, neither is truly seen. And so, instead of intimacy, there is performance. Instead of union, there is reenactment. Each person silently asking the other to heal the wounds of the past, but neither capable of doing so. We are taught that passion proves love, that the more intense the fire, the more true the connection. But intensity is often the red flag, because real love doesn't leave you shaking. It doesn't leave you sleepless, obsessed, and powerless. That isn't love, that's war. Think of the couples who can't let go even as they tear each other apart. The ones who confuse shouting for honesty, jealousy for devotion, chaos for chemistry. They say, we can't live without each other. But what they mean is, our shadows won't let us leave. In these relationships, passion becomes the smoke rising from the battlefield. Every embrace is a ceasefire. Every argument is another round of combat. And yet, they call it love, because they cannot imagine desire without destruction. This isn't just personal, it's cultural. We glorify the battlefield. We write movies, songs, and novels about lovers who fight, suffer, betray, and call it romance. We tell ourselves that if it doesn't hurt, it isn't real. That love without obsession is boring. That safety is weakness. And so, entire generations mistake trauma for passion, mistaking war for intimacy. When attraction becomes war, nobody wins. Both partners walk away bleeding, still carrying the same wounds they brought to the field. And the more it feels like destiny, the more it may be the echo of old battles replaying themselves through new faces. Because here's the dark truth Jung wanted us to see. If your love feels like war, it isn't proof of its depth. It's proof of your shadow, demanding another fight. Desire doesn't only govern individuals, it governs societies. Carl Jung warned that the shadow doesn't stop at the personal, it expands into the collective. And nowhere is this clearer than in how culture uses lust as control. What moves you can be used to rule you. Because the nervous system doesn't just light up in relationships, it lights up in markets, in politics, in culture. Advertisers know this. That's why every product, from perfume to cars, is sold with the promise of desire. Not the car itself, but the woman leaning against it. Not the perfume itself, but the fantasy that wearing it will make someone ache for you. Desire isn't just personal fuel, it's currency. And those who control it, control behavior. But it goes deeper. Media doesn't just sell products, it sells archetypes. The dangerous man who doesn't care. The femme fatale who seduces and abandons. The storylines where obsession is mistaken for devotion, and betrayal is dressed up as passion. We are raised on narratives that glorify lust as power. The movies tell you that the bad boy is irresistible. that the cold woman is intoxicating, that the chase is the real proof of love. We're taught that safety is boring, that peace is weakness, that only those who wound us deeply can awaken our hearts. And so, entire generations are conditioned to pursue the very dynamics that destroy them, because culture labeled them romantic. Look closer, and you'll see a darker pattern. Lust, in its shadow form, is not about connection. It's about hierarchy, about domination. Who holds the attention, holds the power. Who withholds intimacy, controls the chase. Who reflects your wound, becomes your master. And culture rewards these dynamics. The man who conquers women is celebrated. The woman who reduces men to obsession is idolized. It isn't love we glorify, it's conquest. This is why so many confuse lust with freedom, when in reality it is one of the oldest forms of control, because nothing enslaves more quietly than desire. You think you're choosing, but really, you're obeying. Jung would say this: when a society fails to confront its shadow, it doesn't just play out in politics or wars. It plays out in the bedroom. It plays out in the movies we celebrate, the songs we sing, the fantasies we sell. And the darker truth is this: as long as lust is confused with power, we will keep building cultures that worship obsession and dismiss love. We will keep feeding systems that profit from our emptiness. We will keep raising generations that can't tell the difference between chemistry and chains. Because in the end, lust in its shadow form isn't intimacy. It's manipulation. It isn't liberation. It's control. If the shadow can seduce you into obsession, then the only true escape is awareness, not denial, not repression. Awareness. Carl Jung called this the path of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the parts of yourself you once buried. Because here's the truth: you cannot kill the shadow. You cannot silence the anima or the animus. They are part of you, and as long as you run from them, they will hunt you in the faces of strangers. The moment of freedom begins when you recognize projection. When you look at the person you are obsessing over and dare to ask, what do they awaken in me that I have not awakened in myself? Is it her softness, his strength, their mystery, their power, their freedom? These qualities are not theirs alone. They are yours, hidden in the shadow, waiting to be claimed. Once you realize this, the spell begins to break. You stop seeing them as salvation. You start seeing them as a mirror. Integration means bringing back the parts of you you've denied. The man who projects his anima outward must learn to embrace his own sensitivity, creativity, and vulnerability. The woman who projects her animus must learn to claim her own strength, clarity, and independence. This is not easy work. It feels unnatural at first, almost foreign. But every step you take toward embracing your full self weakens the grip of projection. And slowly, attraction shifts. It no longer drags you into chaos. It draws you toward resonance. When you integrate your shadow, you stop chasing people to fill the gaps in your soul. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop confusing pain with passion. And something extraordinary happens. You begin to choose differently. You're no longer drawn to the people who reflect your wounds. You're drawn to the people who reflect your healing. Love stops being a battlefield. It becomes a sanctuary. Because when you know yourself, when you own your shadow instead of outsourcing it, you no longer need someone else to complete you. You are already whole, and from that wholeness, love is no longer a desperate search. It is a deliberate choice, not a cage, not a contract, but freedom. Jung never told us to fear attraction. He told us to understand it, because only then can desire stop being a trap and start being a teacher. The shadow doesn't have to enslave you. It can guide you. It can point to the places inside you that are still waiting for light. And when you bring those pieces home, you discover a love that is not born from wounds, but from wholeness. This is the escape from the trap, not by rejecting desire, but by reclaiming yourself. We are taught that love should take our breath away, that it should feel like chaos, like fire, like the storm we've been waiting for. But what if that isn't love at all? What if that is only the shadow, dressing trauma in the costume of passion? Because here is the paradox Jung pointed to. Lust often feels like chaos. Real love feels like stillness. And to the traumatized psyche, stillness feels unbearable. It feels empty. It feels boring. Peace is foreign when your nervous system has been trained in war. Safety feels wrong when danger has always been your normal. Calm feels suspicious when heartbreak has been your teacher. So when love finally arrives, steady, gentle, consistent, you don't recognize it. You crave the storm, not realizing the storm was the wound all along. Lust will set your heart racing, but love will slow it down. Lust will keep you awake at night, but love will let you sleep. Lust will make you feel addicted, desperate, haunted. Love will make you feel grounded, whole, free. The difference is not in intensity. The difference is in truth. Because lust, without healing, is projection. But love after integration is reality. If you have spent years in the battlefield of desire, peace feels like silence after war, unfamiliar, even frightening. But Jung would remind us, the shadow repeats until it is faced, which means every time you feel drawn to the storm, you are not falling in love. You are falling back into repetition. And every time you feel suspicious of peace, you are actually standing at the doorway of real love. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you haven't healed. And that's why chaos has felt magnetic. It is not your destiny. It's your wound trying to be seen. But once you bring that wound into the light, once you integrate what you've denied, you will find that the most powerful love is not the one that burns, but the one that frees. It will not leave you shaking, begging, or questioning your worth. It will sit beside you like a mirror of your healing, quietly saying, "You are already whole." And in that wholeness, love is not a battlefield. It is not obsession. It is not a chain. It is a sanctuary. The place your soul was searching for, long before it mistook chaos for chemistry. You have just seen the darkest truth about sexual desire, that it is not always love. It is not always chemistry. It is not even always a choice. Sometimes it's your shadow pulling the strings. Sometimes it's your wound demanding another reenactment. And until you face it, you'll keep falling into the same story, with different names and different faces, but the same ending. So ask yourself right now, who have you been addicted to? Your love or your wound?